In 1943, London, England was getting bombarded by German bombs, and night after night these terrified people would spend most of their time underground. But a few brave men, mostly volunteers, would stay up top to make sure their fellow countrymen were doing okay. And one evening in October, a man named Howard, one of these volunteers, was doing his rounds when the Germans started to drop bombs again. And these German planes were flying right above him. So Howard ran into a deserted house in hopes that he would be safe there. And what he encountered next was something from another world. While Howard was resting at the bottom of the stairs praying and hoping to survive this onslaught of German bombs, he felt that something was watching him. And he just started to feel very uneasy. And when he turned around to see if anybody was there, he saw a shadow of something at the top of the stairs. So Howard lit his torch to get a better look. Then he came face to face with the most hideous and scariest thing that he had ever seen in his life. He was staring at what appeared to be a cat, but this thing was a lot bigger than your typical house cat. Plus it had horns, huge claws, and huge glowing red eyes. And Howard was just frozen in fear. Then this cat-like beast jumped down from the stairs, but it completely vanished before it even hit the ground. Now Howard, scared out of his mind, ran back outside as fast as he could, and shortly after he was stopped by two other volunteers, and they saw that Howard was in a state of shock. Now Howard wasn't shy, he wanted answers, so he told these two other volunteers about what he just encountered. And to Howard's surprise, they actually believed him, as they told Howard that there had been other sightings of this creature very recently within this area. Now these two other volunteers were extremely curious, and they convinced Howard to take them to this creepy abandoned house where they had seen this animal, because they too wanted to get a glimpse of this creature. But sadly, it was nowhere to be seen. So shortly after, they left and went back to work. Now Howard was determined to get some answers, and a couple days later he visited one of Britain's most famous clairvoyants of that time, John Pendragon. And after hearing Howard's story, John got out a map of London, and he was able to locate this house right away, which kind of freaked Howard out. And then he told Howard that this was no animal, this was a man, or the ghost of a man. And after John's reading, Howard was now more confused than ever because he was left with more questions than answers. So he decided to do some more research because he was driven to get to the bottom of this. He needed to know what it was that he saw on that day. And a couple days later, and with John's help, they both uncovered that the former owner of this now abandoned house was a very wicked man who was into the occult. And it was reported that this man had killed or sacrificed many cats within the house as offerings to the devil. And they also found out that this devil worshipper committed suicide. He hanged himself right at the top of the stairs, exactly where Howard and many others had seen this beast. Now despite all of Howard's future investigations, he never came face to face with this horned demon again. But since there were so many sightings of this creature during that time period, John, the clairvoyant, wrote a book about it, making this a very famous case throughout England. And even still to this day, some eyewitnesses swear that they too had seen this creature lurking in the darkened streets of London. One of the most interesting legends that I've ever heard of, and one that I get a heck of a lot of requests for, is the Green Children of Woolpit. This story begins in the 12th century when some farmers working in the fields encountered two green children, one boy and one girl. And not only were these farmers shocked by their skin color, they were also shocked by the material that their clothes were made of. And they also realized that these kids spoke in an unknown language and they didn't understand one word of English. But it was pretty obvious that these kids needed help. So these farmers took them back to their village, and the first thing that they did was offer them food. But they wouldn't eat it. And as the days went by, these children were getting sicker and sicker, and it appeared that they were starving to death. Then one day one of these villagers offered them some beans, and the kids did eat these beans. In fact, they loved them. They couldn't get enough of them. And the young girl slowly started to recover. But the young boy, her brother, didn't make it, and he died shortly after arriving to this village. Now over time, this young girl started to eat other food, and she also started to learn English. And once she could finally communicate with these villagers, she told one amazing story. She said that she came from underground, a place where there was no sunlight, only twilight, and all the people within this land were green, just like them, and everything was illuminated. And there was also rivers, oceans, just basically a magical place. And she told them that one day her and her brother discovered a cave, so they decided to explore it. But they ended up getting lost, and when they finally reached the end of this cave, they entered into our world. And they were terrified when they saw our sun and the bright blue sky, because they had never seen anything like it before. And not too long after they emerged from this cave, the farmers found them walking in their fields. Now this girl did live a long and happy life, and she and her brother in their story got a lot of attention throughout this region, and we are still hearing about it to this very day. And people are still searching for this cave in hopes that they might finally be the ones to find it. But sadly, no one ever has. And throughout the centuries, there have been many theories, such as these kids lived in the forest and they only ate beans, and that is why their skin color was green. Now, it is true according to the story that once this girl started to eat other foods, her skin color did change. But that still doesn't explain the unknown language, or the strange clothing, or them being shocked by seeing the sunlight. Now, there's never been a plausible theory that has come forward over the years that could explain this girl's story, as there are no lands on this earth that are illuminated, and no forest so dark that you wouldn't eventually see the sunlight, especially in England. But due to the fact that this was so long ago, it could simply be an exaggeration based on some sort of explainable truth. Now, no matter what the case might be, people have always been fascinated with this legend, making many of us wonder if there could actually be a world within our own Earth where these people do exist. And if so, that would change everything. Until next time, this is Paranormal Junkie. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.